Hi, hello, dojolive fans. Welcome to today's episode. It's Thursday, June 8th. Today, our beloved Kim is not here. She is having a well-deserved vacation, but I'm here. I'm Monovelo, and with me is my amazing co-host for today is Sandra Vasquez. Hello, Sandra.
Hi everyone, nice to
And
see you.
hey, and of course, the star of today's show, Dan Schmerin, co-founder and president of Metaversal. Hey, Dan, thank you so much for coming here, for being here.
Hey guys, great to see you both.
Yeah, and today's show it's going to be an amazing conversation. I already know it. But before we start on the tagline and getting into the topic, Dan, tell us about yourself, your professional journey. Who are you? Who is Metaversal? Just share just about yourself.
I'll keep it relatively brief. I grew up in New York and started my career in Washington, D.C. So that was the first chapter. I spent about 8 years there and worked at the White House, worked at the State Department, as well as the Treasury Department, primarily on economic policy issues and national security issues. And those were the areas of my greatest interest. A formative experience was 2008 to 2011 when I was serving at the Treasury Department, because you'll recall the great financial crisis took place. And that was an interesting point for a very young person to be exposed to a lot of the challenges that are systemic, built into our global financial system, a lot of the things that we take for granted because we know that this is how it works, but we don't usually have the temerity to pause and say, well, why is it that it works that way? Is there an alternative? Could we be doing something different or better? And I'm a student of history, so being able to go back and look at the way things were 30, 40, 60, or 100 years ago can be instructive, because changes that took place, including the United States going off the gold standard, have dramatic impact on the types of challenges that we've encountered even in recent years and even in recent months. So that was the first chapter. The second chapter, I worked on Wall Street at a value investment firm and led our research team. So my research orientation allowed us to focus on a number of companies, big and small. And that opened my eyes to the way so many of the different industries actually produce goods and services that can generate real return for their shareholders and their owners, and motivated me to want to get closer to the operating side of businesses. And so along the way, I always had a passion for arts and culture and was exposed to blockchain technology relatively early through some friends from college. And these are people that I know and trust. And so my thought process was, again, going back to some of the experiences I had early in my career. What are some of the other systems and innovations that may improve the way we conduct our lives, the way society is operating, the way financial services are provided to different groups, and eventually led us to partner with my co-founder Yossi and embark on a journey we call Metaversal. And it's much more than a brand, but we're building a platform that is both acquiring and creating Web3 native intellectual property. So we can dive into more about all things Metaversal and how we're focused on the tokenization of the world.
Yeah, of course. I really love the fact that you have formation in history, because they do say that people who do not know their history are doomed to repeat it. And yeah, that's a really interesting background. Thank you so much. And it really does lead us perfectly into today's topic, which is, Sandra?
Yeah, today's topic is global meltdown to quantum leap. Why tokenization will save the world, and we are gonna dive more deeply into how to repeat. Sorry, got some
That's
notification.
okay.
How to reap the reward on evolving Web3 technologies with the extraordinary possibilities of tokenization.
Yeah. So how is tokenization going to change and save the world? and what are the benefits that we as a community, as humans, can get from switching to a tokenized system?
So first of all, you have to be ready to buckle up. And
Yeah, I love that.
I say buckle up because the same idea when you get on an airplane, people are a little bit excited, they're a little bit nervous, they're not sure
Mhm.
precisely what happens, but we know that you don't get rolling until you fasten your seatbelt.
Yeah.
And this entire innovation is moving at an incredible pace. And so that's the first part of excitement. All the things that are happening now are enabled and building upon the innovation that's happened in the past. So that's the first point that we need to acknowledge. This hasn't come out of thin air. What we call Web3 is this new iteration of the internet. And it's important to frame that trajectory because we're students of history. Web 1 was really read only. Sandra could put information on sites and we could gain that knowledge and digest it. Web 2 took that a step further. It built upon read only and made it read plus write. We could now interact, we could communicate, and you had this proliferation of social applications, all the ones we know and take for granted today. None of that existed just 15 or 20 years ago. And then we are embarking on this third iteration, which is read, write, and own. And I believe that incentives have always mattered. Incentives dictate behavior. So having this strong sense of ownership can influence the types of things that we all spend time on, the decisions that we make about how to allocate finite resources, how to allocate finite amounts of time. No matter the wealth that any of us have, there's one thing we cannot control. There's one thing we can't buy, and that's more time. So the opportunity for us, there's a huge opportunity cost. The benefit of technology has been we're much more efficient. We can get to do so much more with the same amount of time. And a lot of what tokenization unlocks is a result of that new and profound sense of ownership, that it's not just a centralized core group of large companies, primarily tech titans, that dominate our data and our lives because they have made so much of our interactions seamless and easy. And that was a big hallmark of Web 2. But the consequence of that has been that we're beholden to them. I don't actually own much of my data in
Mhm.
digital settings. Big tech companies own that data, whether that's your shopping data, whether that's your photos, photo libraries. And what Web3 is enabling as individuals is for us to have more of that choice, for us to take back some of that control. And that starts with ownership. So tokenization, when we talk about tokenization, not only saving the world, it's going to eat the world. That means it's going to pervade every industry and every part of our lives. And at the highest level, that sounds crazy. It sounds ridiculous. What do you mean? This is going to be like
Yeah.
Pac-Man just going around and eating things? And that visualization is not precise. What we really have in mind is that this is going to be a huge unlock. Think of it as a master key opening up so many doors that historically have been closed. You think about financial exclusion, we should talk about how tokenization can reverse some of that and create
Mhm.
financial inclusion. You talk about medical and healthcare systems, the way we innovate to create new cancer drugs, or how to solve a pandemic like we've just experienced in the last few
Mhm.
years. What can open source and innovation on a blockchain allow and enable, rather than just the closed systems for development of life-saving drugs? And then we could talk about other practical considerations for tokenization, like ticketing.
Hmm.
Sandra may want to go to a concert with Taylor Swift. She's in the news these days. And
Yeah.
especially
buying
because of
tickets is
ticketing.
really a challenge. And even if she
Yeah.
manages to get a ticket from someone else, there's serious concerns about verification and authentication.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's true for many cultural assets, artworks, sculptures. So we could talk about how it
Yeah.
impacts the automobile industries, real estate, and I'll leave it
That's
to you to decide
amazing.
any of those. We'll go down those rabbit holes.
Yeah, that's amazing. I actually remember that upon this huge AI revolution, and when it started, the AI automatic generating images or something like that. There was this huge concern about copyright and about who in the internet actually owns a digital drawing or a picture or anything. And the discussion was the artist owns it, and then no, the artist just put it in the internet. So now the huge Twitter servers or the tech companies are owners of this data, and they can use it to feed their AIs. So I feel like this is a huge and very urgent conversation, like how are we securing our information and our data. So I would love to hear maybe some examples of how tokenization would change this landscape, or how it would evolve along with this huge revolution, or what what can it do, or in a more like specific way, just like examples of how is this working, how is this doing its magic.
So maybe let's pick up on the theme of ticketing to begin with. That's
Yeah.
a tangible example. Most of us have gone to in real life events of some sort. Maybe it's a baseball game, maybe it's a soccer match, maybe it's a museum, or even a musical concert.
Yeah.
And what was historically paper tickets that could be delivered to our house, or paper tickets that we would pick up at the box office, had transformed into electronic tickets. And that innovation has been terrific. We put it into an Apple wallet or an Android, and you scan that code when you appear at the event. What we're talking about now is simply building upon that
Hmm.
existing technology, incorporating a smart contract. When we talk about tokenization, it's not the physical thing that you're going to carry in your pocket, of course. It's all electronic, it's all digital, and it is stored on a blockchain. That's a public
Okay.
ledger. It's a series of code that's on every computer. It's accessible from any computer. Nobody owns it. It's not mine. It's not yours. Anybody has access to it. So that's the first piece, that it's public. Now, whether we know that it's associated with you or not is a separate issue, because there's lots and lots of information that's publicly available. We don't necessarily know that's yours or that's mine. So there is still privacy when you think about things that are on a public blockchain, because it's a separate order of service to be able to identify that this particular item belongs to this individual. Right now, we're just talking about the innovation of tokenization, embedding a smart contract into stuff we already do. And tokenization of ticketing is an important example, because historically, you go and buy a ticket for an event, and you have a choice. Either you're going to attend the event, or for whatever reason you can't, don't want to, or believe you can profit from the resale of that. And that has what allowed for intermediaries and ticket brokers to really rush in over many years, so that our relationship with the sports team or with the performer has changed. I don't feel that connected to the individual on stage. They aren't the ones selling me the ticket. There's all these intermediaries, and all those intermediaries create frictional costs. Part of what Web3 is designed to do is begin reducing so much of those frictional costs, right? Those are the added expenses. What looked like a $100 ticket all of a sudden becomes a $125 purchase. Why? Because of that frictional cost. But if Sandra can't get her ticket day one during the initial sale, she may have to go and try and get it from someone else. And if that event is in high demand, price of that ticket skyrockets. All of a sudden it becomes $200, $300, $1,000 to go to this event. And so we have to pause, just like you heard me saying earlier, and say, well, who's benefiting? If Sandra has to buy that ticket for $1,000 to go and see her favorite musician, her favorite artist, who benefits? Does the performer benefit? Today, the answer to that has been no. The performer doesn't get one more dollar from that contractually specified amount. If it was 100, they may get 60%. They may get $60 from every $100 ticket sold. But if she buys a ticket on resale for $1,000, does the performer get more than 60? No, they don't. That doesn't seem right. Taylor Swift's the one on stage for 2.5 hours. She's singing for her dinner. So there may be a way to fix that. Tokenization is the answer. Let's address a second issue in our equation. When Sandra buys that ticket on resale, how can I help verify that that's a legitimate ticket? We hear stories all the time of people that show up excited with their phone in their hand to get into an event, and the ushers are scanning the QR code, and is it boop? Nope. Sorry, invalid ticket. What do you mean it's an invalid ticket?
Oh,
I
that's a
just paid
nightmare.
$1,000.
Yeah.
You've been duped. Fake ticket.
Oh, that's a
So the
nightmare.
second part of the solution here, and that used to happen with paper tickets too, but it's become more pervasive with electronic tickets because it's very hard for Sandra to authenticate and verify, no, this is actually legitimate. This is very real. I don't just have to trust what this intermediary is telling me. So this idea of a trustless system is an important facet of the tokenization economy of Web3. And it's trustless because the data is verifiable on a public blockchain. We're going to have interfaces that Sandra could easily go into. She doesn't have to be an engineer to double check and put a little green check mark. Yep, authentic ticket. No funny business here. Provides us with reassurance, peace of mind. It's an important element of what's being introduced through tokenization. And then the third piece is getting to know, bringing consumers and creators much closer together. Because all of a sudden, you now have this digital footprint, which you can elect to share. You can elect to say, you know what? I loved that Taylor Swift concert, and I have verifiable proof that I was there. And the artist, after the concert, can say, you know what, Sandra? You're one of the ticket holders that went to that special concert, and I'm going to offer you something else. I want you to remain an important part of my community. And we'll get later in this conversation to talk about loyalty and how the shape and face of loyalty is shifting. But it's an interesting phenomenon as we sit here in middle 2023 that for so
Yeah.
long, loyalty was something that we felt we owed to
Mhm.
brands and that we had to earn. And that script is being shifted now
Mhm.
because brands recognize it's not enough just to grab our attention. They need to figure out how to retain us. It's a
Yeah.
war of retention, not just attention.
Yeah. Well, that's really enlightening and amazing. And I do agree that it's such a common thing when you are going to a concert. It's even like a normal fear that you're online and you're like, oh my god, I hope this ticket is legit, even if you got it like in the actual source. You also mentioned a tokenization regarding medical investigation and I think drug investigation, like for medicine and healthcare. How does the tokenization work in these aspect, like in these investigations that often happen behind closed doors?
So this is still an emerging area, but the same principle applies. Today, so much of the innovation around biotech occurs in closed doors, in labs, and the information between those labs are not often shared. It's proprietary R&D. Now, there's valid economic reasons for that. If you're going to invest in Monica's lab to solve a thorny issue, you want to make sure that you retain the intellectual property rights so that that can be monetized. So when the drug comes out, your company is able to repay all the money it spent on research and development. And this is a big part of the reason why in places like the United States, healthcare costs have historically been at the top of the charts, right? They're generally
Yeah.
considered some of the most expensive in the world. And in the
Hmm.
same breath, people will say, but healthcare in the United States is top notch. We have some
Hmm.
of the best innovation, some of the best treatments, some of the best machines to be able to treat a whole host of really thorny medical problems. And people don't necessarily say that about many other countries. So there's that dynamic around innovation on the one hand and the extraordinary cost of trying to solve and have these breakthroughs versus the required payback. But the opportunity around tokenization is that where do you allow for great collaboration to happen, even in spaces where there's already been innovation? Maybe it's variations on existing drugs, not just new drugs. Trying to solve the battle against COVID was partly new, but also partly a variation on an existing theme, right? This was a virus. We have long had and battled against different viruses. We have flu shots every year that is a form of these viruses. This happened to be an unusual virus, but it falls into a similar family. This idea around SARS is not entirely new. We've seen it before. And so this was a different variation on that theme. And the point there is, can you apply and can you use existing frameworks, existing technology, particularly if it becomes open source, if researchers are willing to share more of that innovation, more of that technology, maybe not it's day one, but
Hmm.
maybe as time progresses. In the case of COVID, we were using mRNA
Hmm.
innovation. And some companies were able to very successfully utilize that to create effective drugs, and many other companies were not. You look at the results in
Hmm.
China and elsewhere, including in Russia, they claimed that they had very effective drugs, and most of the results spoke for themselves. They were unfortunately ineffective.
Okay, so my takeaway here is that this would happen, these, joint efforts and willingness to share would happen because tokenization will allow these people to retain the ownership to their own information and the things they produced, right? So even if they, shared it and mixed it and everything, you could still trace it back to the original creator. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're 100% right. So it's not
Oh.
only that tokenization is going to help for the research and development of drugs, it will help at an individual level because we're going to have greater ease and ability to retain our own medical records, which
Okay.
today is a big challenge. You go and see different doctors at different hospitals, the information is scattered all over the place. We envision a world where all of that data gets tokenized on chain. Again, just because it's on a public ledger doesn't mean everyone knows your health history. It's going to be specific to you. It's going to be likely held in a private wallet of yours. And you probably aren't going to identify that it's your information because we keep health data private. But it's going to be widely accessible to you. from any place that you go. You don't have to go to the hospital to get your x-rays and bring it to a doctor. You'll know, and it'll be easily accessible on your phone where that information is. So that's a breakthrough. But back to your point about treating cancer. There's already research that shows artificial intelligence can provide enormous breakthroughs in detecting a wide range of cancers. Maybe the most obvious is skin cancers because it's exterior to our body. And so for all those people that can't afford or don't have the time or luxury to go for regular dermatology exams to try and do early detection of skin cancer, which can lead to melanoma, there's AI technology which is going to help detect that right from the comfort of your computer. And so researchers and scientists are already pointing to the fact that using blockchains is enabling such great connectivity so that researchers can share what some of those AI models are already detecting. And that's an example of innovation that can prove to be a game changer, really life-saving.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my God, I didn't know. It's amazing. Like I mean, it does sound like something that is happening right now because AI has come such a long way. But knowing that this innovation and especially if that tokenization is enabling such incredible changes and improvements in healthcare, it's so encouraging and it's just amazing. It's something amazing to learn today. So we are entering the last moments of today's show. I feel like this topic is something we could just keep talking about for hours and hours because I feel like there's an example for every industry in this. Sadly, we don't have much more time. So I'd like you to just give some words of wisdom or finish with any, I don't know, lesson learned or prediction to where tokenization is taking the world. Just
Yeah, so Dan,
some
you
words.
give us two really good examples of how tokenization will change the day-to-day for us as users and society. But what do you see, and I'm really interested in that, what do you see that is going to be one of the big changes that we might not be seeing right now? Because it's easy for us to pinpoint, oh, the tech industry, the fintech industry will have an impact because now we're able to track and know, deposits or something like that. But what is something that you are excited about that see that is going to affect us as users and societies that we, the day-to-day regular people, might don't see at this point? Because we're on a point where the history is being made, and that is exciting.
So a couple of observations. One, anytime you have this step change in something new, it's very hard for us as individuals to wrap our brain around it.
Mm-hmm.
We as humans are reactionary. We really aren't proactive. And so we may read or hear about something, but it doesn't immediately impact our day-to-day. So we say, yeah, that sounds interesting. It's futuristic. They tell me I'll end up on the moon one day also. And we tuck it away. The difference here is that tokenization is already impacting day-to-day experiences. And for the individual, like you ask, I think it's going to bring out the creator in each of us. I often say that all of us are collectors in some form or fashion. People can collect shoes, they can collect trading cards, they can collect sports memorabilia. I used to collect little Matchbox cars. Everybody has a passion about something. And the beauty of tokenization and Web3 more broadly is that by putting ownership back at the center, it's going to change the incentive calculus. Monica is going to say, well, wait a minute, I want to allocate my time differently today because I can actually create something that's unique. And I have a method of expressing it because I can reach anyone now. I don't even have to travel from the comfort of my home, and I can reach them. And there are going to be other people that share those interests. And we can now find each other. We can form small communities. And so my point is that we're going to end up going back to things that we loved in our youth, back to our sense of small communities, right? It's not just that there's 8 billion people on the earth and I'm going to know a very small fraction of them. That isn't relevant. What's relevant is that I want to be able to interact with people that have some shared interests, some shared passions. And they're not just going to be within geographic proximity, which is historically what happened. We go to a religious place of worship. It's forming a sense of community, but it's defined by people in our geographic proximity. Now we're going to be able to have interactions with people that share some of those same interests, that demonstrate that through how they're allocating their time and their sense of ownership over their passion projects. And I think this is a new renaissance. It's going to be a virtual renaissance and a great awakening. So everyone should be excited about it.
Oh, I love that concept, the new renaissance. Thank you so much for being here. Hang on after we go offline just for a second, so we can do our proper.
Thanks
I
for having
forgot
me.
the word. Yeah,
It's great to be with you.
proper goodbyes. I think I forgot. But anyways, so we are reaching the end of our show. We don't have any more shows this week, sadly. We'll see you all on Monday for this week's recap. Don't miss out. And yeah, thank you for being here, Dan. It was an amazing conversation, really. So bye for now.